Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't know where this comes from, you need to go back in time to 1997 and watch Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery. It's a classic movie. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you watch it. Anyway, so we are in the 2020 Champions Chess Tour. The Skilling Open. And they're actually, I think there's one more day left, so they're playing from the 21st to the 24th. And so I have a game for you that was taken out of round 3, and that is Wesley So versus Levon Aronian. Been playing for forever. They're old rivals, definitely. Yeah, if you guys want to go ahead and hang around to the end, what I'm going to be doing, I've already been doing it anyway, but what I'll be making sure that I do is, sometimes, there is a game that just kind of seems like it stops abruptly. One player resigns, and it's not always clear why the player resigned. So what I do is I basically go into an explanation and kind of give the reasons as to why the players, either player would have resigned. Because like I said, sometimes it just seems like it stops and it's kind of confusing. Like, well, why did it stop? It kind of seems like there's still some life left. But, sometimes it's like an in-game concept or, it's a certain tactical combination that's coming up that's not easy to see. Right as the position sits. So like I said, I go into detail and I'll break it down and everything, so that way you have a clear understanding of exactly why the game stopped and stuff. But if you guys are ready, let's go ahead and take a look and see what we have for this game here. Before I do that, let me go ahead and make sure I show you guys the standings. So this is the current standings of the tournament. And so you see Anish Giri's there in first, and we have Wesley So tied for fourth with Yanda Pomniachi, Hikaru Nakamura, and Levon Aronian. So that's going into this final day here. So let me get rid of that. And let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we have a D4 opening here. All right, knight to F6. We got C4. We got E6. Knight to F3. And we have D5. So we have it's the queen's pawn. Could be queen's gambit declined, queen's gambit accepted, some Slav type stuff. We also go into a Catalan from here, and so G3. So we're going into Catalan territory here. All right, so bishop to E7. We have bishop to G2. All right, so we have castles for black, castles for white, and we have D takes C4 and queen C2, and so now we have the Catalan Open variation. All right, so we have A6. Now, something I mentioned in my previous videos is trying to hold on to that pawn that you take on C4 with the B5. Now, in this particular position, so if you just back up here after queen to C2, we would have something like B5. In this particular position, it's not deadly, but it's definitely not in your best interest to try to do that. Like I say before, normally, when you have, you take D takes C4, it's not really a good idea to try to hold on to it with with B5. And so we're gonna have A4 that comes and attacks that pawn. And of course, if you were to cover it with the A pawn, you'd have A takes, and then of course after A takes, your rook is kind of hanging, so you don't want to do that. Same thing with C6. You'd have takes here, and then this rook is exposed along this diagonal. So you definitely don't want to make so many pawn moves in the opening. And if you're making too many pawn moves, you still have your pieces all the way back here, on the back rank and stuff like that. So your most important thing to do when you're opening the game is to develop your pieces and stuff like that. So most likely we'd see a B4 here. All right, so we would have knight F to D2, just discovering the attack on the rook on the corner. All right, so we'd have to block that with a C6. All right, so knight would take C4. We'd have queen taking D4. All right, so we'd have rook to D1. Throwing a tempo on that queen. All right, so queen would try to pin the knight here with queen to C5. All right, so we see bishop to E3. All right, queen to H5. Knight B to D2. And if you try to do something like holding on to that pawn on B4 with A5, you'd see bishop to F4. Just trying to undermine the protection of that pawn, and there's not really a good way to defend it. There's two different really variations you can go into. So we see knight b to d7, just kind of giving the pawn away, knowing it's too hard to hold on to. So we see bishop takes c6, rook to a7, and then bishop back to f3. Getting an attack on this queen here. And so if you just wanted to try to protect the pawn here with bishop to b7, you see that tempo like we saw a second ago on the queen, queen to f, bishop to f3, and then queen to g6. And once we traded queens on g6, queen takes g6, h takes g6, we'd see knight to b3. So knight to b3 is a big theme in this particular situation. And once you can knock the queen around a little bit, this knight is always going to come to b3 and double attack this pawn. And there's not really a good way to defend it, so you're going to be losing it here. So if we just go back to what was played in the game. So we had a6, like I said. All right, so we have a4, just making sure that we prevent b5 from coming. All right, so we have bishop to d7, and queen takes c4. Like I said, it's not really good in your best interest to try to hold on to that pawn. So it's better just to go ahead and give it up. All right, so we have bishop to c6. Just a pretty good way of trying to defend that pawn here. All right, so bishop to f4. All right, bishop d6. All right, so we have knight to c3. All right, bishop takes f4. G takes f4. All right, a5. Just trying to make it pretty hard for this pawn to move. And maybe down the line at some point, maybe trying to see if we can't put a knight in this square here. All right, so we have e3. All right, knight b to d7. All right, queen to b3. We have rook to a6. All right, rook f to d1. All right, queen to e7. So I mean, both sides are pretty much more or less gotten their opening completed. White does have kind of a compromised structure here, so it's not the best. But you have all of the pieces developed for white and black. So it's fairly even for both sides. It's not it's not super better for either side. All right, so we have queen to c2. All right, we have g6. Now g6 actually, unfortunately, is kind of like a wasted tempo. It doesn't really do a lot to defend the center and these pawn pushes and stuff like that. So you could definitely see something. And we have actually in this position, we do have rook a to c1 by Wesley So. But going back to what I was talking about a second ago, Wesley So did miss a very strong continuation, and that was the move e4 here instead of rook a to c1. And so it's gonna start trying to kick away some of black's pieces here. And so we probably would see something like b6. Just trying to give this bishop some room to move, because of course it was standing a chance of being trapped. And so we would see something like e5. Knight would come to d5. We'd see knight takes d5. Of course we wouldn't see pawn takes d5, because we'd just be dropping the bishop here. All right, so we'd see bishop takes d5, and then we see queen takes c7. So as you can see here with the push of e4, it forced away at least a pawn. So that was something that was very very strong for Wesley So in this position. And also Levon Aronian kind of missed a much better developing move, because like I said, g6, there isn't really too much of a threat here on h7. I mean, even if you were to play something like this, I mean, this knight is holding that square down pretty good. And since white doesn't have a dark squared bishop, it's not I mean, yeah, you don't have to worry about weaknesses and stuff like that on the dark squares, but like I said, it's kind of like it's kind of one of those see and go situations where you kind of see a threat that's not really there, so you kind of play a defensive move and you just waste the tempo. So if Aronian would have played something like rook to d8, it would have definitely done something to defend against what white had the ability to do in the other position. So if we did see e4 in this particular position here, we could have seen knight back to f8, and then if e5 would have been pushed, and then we would have been able to see knight to h5. Just asking a real big question to this pawn, and trying to take advantage of the weaknesses of the double pawns and the open king's position over here. So going back, like I said, to what was played before, so we had rook a to c1. All right, so we had bishop takes f3. All right, and bishop takes f3. All right, and then we have c6. You know, just trying to make sure we defend that that backwards, well, currently backwards, you know, vulnerable b7 pawn. All right, so we have b3, and we have rook to b6. All right, so we have knight to b1. Just seeing a couple moves ahead because, you know, we see knight to d5 coming up. And so we know that the knight is, you know, trying to come into this square here and try to knock this queen away. So we need to make sure we defend this this pawn here on b3. All right, so we have knight to d2, doing exactly that in the nick of time. All right, so we see knight to b4, and we see queen to b1. All right, so we have queen to h4, trying to, you know, activate the queen, get it on a, you know, get it on a good path towards the king. As you can see, like, you know, the white king is somewhat open. It's not the end of the world, but, you know, you definitely, you know, with the queen being right here, it's not a completely comfortable situation for the king to just kind of be wide open like that. All right, so we see bishop to e2. All right, so knight to f6, and we have knight to f3. You know, just trying to knock that queen out of the way. Because like I said, you know, you have this king here on this open file, and it's you know, it's not a very comfortable situation to be in here. All right, so we have queen to h3, and we have knight to g5. All right, so we have queen back to h4. We have knight back to f3, queen back to h3. So it kind of looks like we might be going into a draw here, but they do vary. So Wesley So does vary here in this particular point. And, you know, so some of you guys might be wondering, like, you know, why did you just basically just keep repeating moves? The time control for the game is 15 minutes to start with a 10-second increment. And so, you know, it's a rapid game. So, you know, you have quite a bit of time, but, you know, there's a lot of situations you'll get into where it doesn't hurt to gain 10 or 20 seconds on the clock. Because it can come in handy later on for you, you know, when you're, you know, when you have to think for a little bit longer. So as opposed to there being a delay where you're not gaining any time when you're, you know, when you get the increment, you know, it usually helps you a lot to, you know, get the, you know, kind of store up a little bit of time, you know, just down the line. So, you know, I'm pretty sure that's why they're doing that. All right, so we have rook to d8. All right, so we have rook to c5, just trying to take advantage of this this weak pawn here on a5. All right, so knight b to d5. Like I said, you guys have to make sure that you remember, you know, which knight moved, because you definitely don't want to accidentally put that this knight moved, and then it throws off all your, you know, analysis and calculation and stuff like that. So like I said, knight b to d5. All right, so we have bishop to f1. And just backing up a touch here, you know, you definitely, you know, it looks like the pawn might be kind of free, but, you know, you have this knight b to d5 kind of, it was a little sneaky threat here of this move here, because, you know, right now this rook is defending that square. And so, of course, if you just kind of just get, you know, closed-minded and just tunnel vision and you say, hey, let me go ahead and snap this pawn off, you're going to, you know, it's going to be kind of bad after knight c3, because, you know, you have this fork, you know, on these, let me get this here. You have this fork on all three of these pieces. And, you know, of course, this, you know, this capture here is going to be coming with checks. So you definitely don't want that. So, like I said, we have bishop to f1, knocking that queen away. And we have queen to h4. And if you guys want to go ahead and stop the video real quick and take see if you can take a little bit to see if you can figure out what Wesley So actually did here. And it seems like a very subtle move, and you're just like, you know, after I show it to you, unless you've guessed it already, you might be kind of thinking like, man, like it's just such a small, subtle looking move, but you know, it has a really huge impact. So if you want to, like I said, if you want to stop it real quick and see if you can figure out what Wesley So did in this position, it's a very strong move, and then you know, catch up with us in a second. All right, cool. All right, so for those of you that came up with h3. You guys have been watching my videos. Or maybe you just, you know, you're just good at preventive chess. Like I said before, guys, you know, it's just as important to defend against your opponent's threats as it is for you to play offensively. And so, you know, like I said, it seems like this is a very, very like kind of small, you know, unimportant move. And it just kind of seems like it opens your king up a little bit, but it has very, very real, you know, defensive possibilities. So if we look at just a couple different variations as to why h3 is so strong. So let's say, for example, you went ahead And you know, you're just thinking so strong. You're like, man, let me just get this pawn, man. So you just want to move the queen out of the fork situation. So we might see something like knight to b3 or knight to b4, and then we'd see queen to c3. So you're just kind of thinking like, man, I'm set up now. You know, now I don't have any fork situations. I'm able to grab this pawn, right? Unfortunately, you have knight to g4, and there's actually quite a few threats that are introduced with this particular move. You know, you have the threat of queen takes here, which is checkmate. You also have the queen takes here, which, you know, of course, when the king moves over, that's checkmate. And so, you know, unfortunately, you can't do something like, you know, knight takes g4 because you're gonna fall into queen takes g4. And as you guys can see, this is a double attack with a check. And it's also going to be picking up this undefended rook. So, like I said before, you know, these undefended pieces can really come back to haunt you. So we'd see probably something like bishop to g2, and queen would take d1 there. And you know, of course, if you noticed that that was a possibility of a variation, so you know, you might play bishop to g2, but you know, after queen takes f2 with check, king over to h1 only move, knight taking x, you know, knight x3. Or knight taking e3, excuse me. You know, you'd be forced to play rook g1, and then the queen. I mean, as you can see here, you're just dropping like all the pawns in the world, and you know, your position is just horribly crumbled. So, like I said before, we have h3, just basically just avoiding all of that. So that's really deep calculation that we're seeing here by Wesley. So, all right, so we see knight back to d7. All right, so knight takes d7, rook takes d7. We see queen to c2, kind of doing the idea that I was talking about a second ago, you know, kind of sidestepping the, you know, the fork situation. So we have queen back to d8, trying to introduce like a little tactic there, but it doesn't quite work. So, you know, Wesley So just kind of calls his bluff real quick. So we have rook takes a5. We have rook to a6, discovering attack on the rook if you just leave it there. All right, so we have rook takes a6. We have pawn takes a6, bishop takes a6. And as you guys can see, Wesley So is up 2 complete pawns. Doesn't really have anything to worry about in this position here. You know, he also has an attack here on the c6 pawn. And so we protect that with knight to b4. We have queen to e2, just protecting that bishop here. And, you know, trying to see if we, you know, can entice him to take here so we can, you know, win a full rook. But, you know, Wesley So's not going for that. All right, so we have bishop to b5, getting the bishop out of the attack square and, you know, kind of trying to knock that rook around a little bit. So we have rook to d6, queen to e1. All right, so knight to d5, bishop back to e2. All right, queen to b6. Throwing a little attack on this pawn here. All right, so we have pawn takes c5, queen takes c5, and we have bishop to c4. And so you guys can see that, you know, basically, you know, white has literally everything, you know, taken care of defensively. And you know, it's really, really hard for black to try to, you know, cause anything here. And so, you know, we have rook to c6. All right, so we have a5. You know, pawns must be pushed. Past pawns must be pushed here. All right, so we have knight to f6. All right, and we have a6, taking advantage of the bishop, protecting that pawn. All right, so we have rook to c8. All right, so we have queen to d2. All right, so queen over to h4, just trying to see if, you know, maybe this queen moves away. We have an attack on this rook here. All right, so we have a7, and we have rook to a8, and we have queen to d8 with check. And so that's pretty nasty right there. That's a little queen sacrifice, but you know, like I said before in the video, I mean, you know, this is just completely over. I mean, you're gonna have rook takes here, only move. Well, not only move, but of course, if you don't, you know, the queen's just gonna pick up the rook in the corner. And after check here, you know, you can throw the knight in the way, or you know, you can just move king down. Then you have an extra queen, and I mean, you don't really need an engine to look at this position and just be like, man, this hurts to look at. But yeah, so guys, that is the game. Wesley So versus Levon Aronian from the 2020 Champions Chess Tour Skellig Open. And appreciate you guys. Go ahead and subscribe and like, and I will see you guys next time. All right, then.